Yo, yo, yo. Hey, yo, what's good to all my heroes and villains out there? You know who it is. It's your boy, LC. And guys, welcome to another episode of Heroes and Villains Collectibles. And, yeah. Oh, my drink's all the way over here. Hope everybody's chilling. Hope everybody's having an awesome weekend. It's, Saturday, man. So, Saturday night. So, hope everybody's having a good one. Salud to everybody out there. You guys already seen the title. We're gonna be chilling, just talking. We're gonna be checking out the story for the what is it? The Daredevil, because we got the Disney Plus series coming. But we are going to jump on and check out, just so you guys know, the Muse is a villain that is going to be in the new show. Okay, this is gonna be one of the last story times that we're gonna go ahead and check out. This is going to be like a presentation. I don't know if this is going to be an origin story to show about the Muse character, but all that I know is that this character is going to be in the Daredevil show. Now, are they going to do the character? Now, when you see this character in the comic books, it's gonna leave you wondering, like, yo, are they gonna do this character exactly like in the comic books? You know what I mean? Or are they gonna power him down? Are they gonna do, you know what I mean? So, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. So, let's go ahead and jump on the last story time. Okay, and this one is called Daredevil Hates Fighting Muse. Okay, and so I had everything set up. I had everything already set up, queued up, and I have to get me a little track of cookie or something. But we'll see. Give me a snack. But let's go ahead. Bam. Here we go. Smash that like, guys. Last story time here. We're gonna see who the hell the Muse is, and the Muse is a character, a villain that will be in the Daredevil show. So here we go.
The villain Muse has been announced as the main villain for Daredevil Born Again in the MCU, so we're going to cover the story with him. So this opens up basically with just a gigantic mural on a wall. And initially, it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, right? Seems pretty innocuous. But what we find out right off the bat from Daredevil is that this entire mural is painted in blood. Now, there's just this guy, right, who's just laying there next to the whole thing. Something I do also want to point out for a second is that there's a kid here who's named Blind Spot, right? His name is technically Sam Chung, and he actually wears a suit that's battery powered that allows him to go invisible. He's kind of like a sidekick to Daredevil, if there was such a thing in this day and age. But the fact remains, like, Sam doesn't really understand how dark things can be when it comes to the world of Daredevil. Because when you're talking about street level villains, right, guys like Jigsaw.
Now, Jigsaw, once again, we got to see him in The Punisher. In The Punisher season 1 and season 2, we got to see Jigsaw. So that's gonna be, and we're gonna see Punisher in the new Daredevil Born Again show as well. Like, hey, it's all canon with the shows.
You know, Tombstone, Lonnie, different things like that. You're talking about some pretty hardcore villains who do some pretty hardcore stuff. But even Daredevil himself hasn't seen anything like this, because normally villains are fairly two-dimensional. They want money or power or something like that. But it's like Michael Caine said.
Once again, I'm warning you guys, this is a fucked up story. Like, this Muse guy is really fucked up. I know this story right here. This is fucked up.
Some men just want to watch the world burn. And so while they're talking about calling the cops,
I'll be back. I need to get a cookie or something.
which of course they do. The question that's asked by Blind Spot is, how much blood do you think it took to make this? And that's where Daredevil, kind of sniffing around, realizes that not all this blood comes from the same person. And he realizes it actually comes from at least 113 people. Now, at that point, you switch over to what's called the Durnan Gallery. And in fact, it's kind of this gallery that's done based on the painting and all that kind of stuff, where the general public can come and see it, and court put a gag order in place that kept it from happening, and so on and so forth. The people who did it will become important later on in the story, at least relatively important. But what is important here is once they get to the mural, the whole thing's been painted over with the words, "You're only as good as your last performance," and an address, right? This is an invitation, because what it does is it leads to Matt Murdock and it leads to Sam basically, getting a police escort, getting to that location in the Bronx. And when they get there, there's a whole bunch of Inhumans that are all dead. Now, this takes place following Inhumanity. And for those of you guys who are unfamiliar with that, during the events of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, Black Bolt got absolutely dominated by Thanos, which makes perfect sense because Black Bolt sucks. But prior to that point, Black Bolt had detonated something called the Terrigen Bomb, and we ended up learning that secretly all across Earth were all these Inhumans that nobody knew about. And so these all started activating and so on and so forth. The fallout of that came post-Secret Wars, going into all new, all different Marvel, even continuing here, which is that all these Inhumans just kind of exist out there in different capacities. Some join the royal family out in Attilan, which nobody knows why you'd want to do that, and then some decide to stay out here. What's going on is that this guy, right, Muse, basically, has killed these Inhumans and in turn positioned them as almost kind of caricatures performing mundane tasks. And that's what's so crazy about it, is what we're going to find is this guy does this as a kind of work of art, because even this shows just kind of the mundane nature of life. People just doing things that people do because we're people and that's just what we do, right? And so that's one of the crazy things, is because Sam's never seen anything like this. So it totally blows his mind. And even Matt Murdock, right, seeing as best he can, is pretty blown away by all of it. But for those of you guys who are familiar with Daredevil, this guy's always paying attention to what goes on around him, right? It's second nature, just kind of him being on the streets for so long, so on and so forth. And so what he does is he picks up a heartbeat, and the heartbeat has a bit of a flutter, a nervous heartbeat, and he realizes someone's watching. So he asked the question of one of the cops, right? He's like, "Are there any private spots around here?" And this guy says, "Sure, the whole building's vacant. The owner just finished a big renovation. He was planning to start leasing the floors next month. Just pick a floor." And so Matt Murdock goes to the rooftop, and as he follows this heartbeat, right, it gets louder and louder the closer he gets. He finally comes face to face with Muse. The first question this guy asks, "Do you like my work?" Now, what's crazy about this is that we get this kind of perception of Muse from Matt Murdock's viewpoint to a degree, in the sense that this guy kind of operates like a vortex, right? And what we're literally told, sense sounds, it's like he's drawing them into himself, like a black hole of sensory information. And what it does is just kind of disrupts the nature of Matt Murdock's powers, right? Because remember, echolocation, using his different senses to compensate for his blindness in order to kind of quote unquote see everything around him. And so this is right off the bat a weakness that Matt Murdock has. He can't directly see this guy. And so what you get is this conversation between the two of them where Matt Murdock asks the question, "Who are you?" Right? And that's the cool thing. This is why I love the character of Muse, right? He says, "Haven't you seen the papers? They're calling me Vincent Van Gogh. I don't like that though. It's low, undistinguished. I've been toying with the name Muse, but that could change. Reinvention is one of the keys to a long career." Because what this guy does is just kind of fall rank and file with the nature of people who commit these kinds of crimes. It's one of the reasons why, like, whenever you see movies, and I don't know if it really happens in the real world, but they'll put out a kind of name for this person that they will take offense to. And it's an effort to draw them out or to get them to create more, reckless crimes and make it easier to find them. Of course, by doing that, you willingly more or less sacrifice people. But, at the end of the day, I guess that's just a price that cops are willing to pay. I don't really know. But this guy, he says, "Don't make me beg. Tell me if you liked my work." And that's when Matt Murdock begins to kind of put it all together. And he's like, the people you murdered? Like, what kind of work is that supposed to be? And the thing that Muse responds with is he says, murder, that's a funny little word. Is it murder if the person wants to die? I don't think so. I think that's a gift. And it creates this really interesting moral philosophy. If a person wants to die, is it really considered murder of that person, right? I mean, I guess according to the court systems, sure. But what about that person's agency, right? What about their desire to no longer live? Do they have no real ability to influence that? Or do we just kind of hand wave the ideology that, well, they're not rational, they're not sound, because no rational, sound person would do that for no other reason than the fact that we as people have just kind of shoulder shrug decided that. And so it's one of those really interesting moral quandaries that sort of comes in with a character like him. But at the end of the day, he realizes, okay, Matt doesn't like it. He's like, then my next work will be better. And so when Matt asks, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you killing? He says, I am an artist, my friend. And as an artist, I hold to a strict code. Never explain and never apologize. For example, then he pops a grenade and Matt Murdock immediately bails. This guy just flees for his life. The whole thing goes off and Matt Murdock realizes there's no heat and no pressure. It was likely a flashbang. It's not a real thing. And so following that, he basically picks up with a phone call that comes from Sam. And the reason why is because the next day, Sam contacts him because basically this guy, Muse, has shown up in a courtroom, right? And he literally says, do you like my knife? I carved it myself. I believe you can find beauty inside just about anything. For instance, my knife was once inside a woman named Carolyn Stringer. Not a very attractive lady, it has to be said, but just look at her now. And so it's one of those things where he sees himself as improving them, right? It's like what is it? Red Dragon, right? Like Mrs. Leeds evolving. Do you see? Like it's that kind of thing, right? So again, a very twisted and screwed up perspective, but he's not your normal run-of-the-mill villain, right? Which just makes him so cool because one of the cops jumps up, points a gun at him and says, lose the knife. He's like, sure thing. And like throws the knife at the guy, hits him right in the throat. So it's just like, dang, dude, this guy is dope, right? Immediately he grabs the judge and bails. Sam jumps after him the whole time he's on the phone with Matt Murdock, right? And like literally Matt's just like, I heard a scream. What happened? And he's like, Muse, right? He killed a cop and then he ran. He took the judge. He was so fast, Daredevil. It all happened so fast. I didn't even have time to move. And where Daredevil asked the question, where is he now? Where is Muse? The response to Sam, I don't know, but I will. And so what you do is you get to the outside and literally it's just like all these cops outside the courtroom, right? SWAT the whole 9 yards, right? Let the hostage go. We can talk about this, right? His response, oh no, I'm not much of a talker. It's something to notice here. This guy doesn't panic. This guy doesn't get overwhelmed. Now, that's kind of like a hallmark of just like being a psychopath or a sociopath. Sure, you feel emotions, but for the most part, in moments when like you're actually bringing harm to people, what you're doing doesn't really matter to you in reference to like how it affects the other person. It's irrelevant, right? So the fact that he's surrounded by cops and all these people have guns pointed at him, it's just kind of like, I mean, I'm not really much of a talker. You know, that's not really my thing. And he says, I prefer to let my work speak for me. And what he does is he pulls out a detonator because the guy had rigged the court to blow. The entire courthouse. He rigged the whole thing, right? Detonates it all goes off, right? One of the cops requesting backup, EMTs and bomb squad to Center Street, right? Daredevil's on his way out there as fast as he possibly can, beating feet. While all that happens, literally Muse just grabs the judge and bails in the sewers. And then in turn, Sam goes after him, all the while on the phone with Matt. And Matt says, do not go down there. If you do, I'll end up losing contact with you. Now for Matt Murdock, this is a big deal because Sam is untrained. This is a guy who has joined alongside Matt Murdock on his journey, but doesn't realize how hard and fast things can get and how dark and screwed up they can get. And so what you do is you switch over to things from Sam's perspective, right? And he's like, why did I say that? I'm not letting him kill anybody else. Who do I think I am? I just want to impress Daredevil. It sounded like something that he would say. And he says, do I really mean it? How far will I actually take this? So he's kind of figuring out his role of a superhero as he goes through all this stuff. And even then, like when Muse lays the judge down, he sits him around all the other people that he's kidnapped and he simply says, time to create. And so we get this really cool explanation here as he's talking to all of them, right? He says, ultimately though, this will be my work. You should know that I consider you to be essential parts of the team. I couldn't realize my vision without each and every one of you. Do you think the symbolism here is too overt? A judge, a politician, and 2 cops. The entire legal system start to finish. More specifically, Councilwoman Pearson, Officer Scott and Menendez, and of course, Judge Laird, the 4 members of the legal system who conspired to shut down the public's access to my beautiful blood mural. These are the ones, specifically the councilwoman and the judge, who issued the order to shut down the public's access to his mural, right? He takes personal offense to it. And so of course, he rolls out his toolkit, right? His bag of goodies, and he says, so I thought,
Introducing the FilterSorb Whole House Water Conditioner, a complete home water filtration and conditioning system by Pure Again Water. Calcium and magnesium are healthy minerals found in your home's water supply. However, when these ions are heated, they can wreak havoc on your home, causing hard water and scale buildup in your pipes and appliances. In the past, traditional salt-based water softeners have been used to soften water.
present the work down here with everything else that's
How to get my lemon heads. Yeah, I left my hat over there.
gone down the toilet. Symbolism is tricky. It's a fine line. Too little and no one gets
Got a sweet tooth.
the point. Too much and it's just obvious. Art should never be obvious. So again, this is one of the coolest things about him, right? When you look at Daredevil villains, especially somebody like Bullseye, as awesome as Bullseye is, and as ridiculously underrated and underutilized as he is in Marvel Comics, he's still basically your run-of-the-mill villain. Outside of stories like Shadowland, right, where he just fought an army of ninjas by himself, which technically should just simply be impossible because the Hand are an almost indestructible ninja clan. Even looking at guys like Kingpin, who almost kind of seem larger than life, they're still basically run-of-the-mill, seeking power, seeking recognition, seeking fame. This guy is just kind of wanting to create art. He considers himself an artist and he wants the world to see the work that he's creating, but he's not really doing it with a clear message. It's not as though he's telling them, you guys represent corruption and I'm going to show society what corruption is. It's not really anything like that, right? For him, he's just performing what he considers to be art. And he says, that said, you guys are not the public. You're part of the work. So it's important that you understand the intent of all of this. I think it will help inform your stylistic choices as we move forward. And he says, oh, I don't know. I just don't know. I feel like I'm missing something. This is a challenging piece, I have to tell you. And so what he does with his knife, he just grabs one of the cops and cuts their ear off. And he was like, yeah, sometimes that's just the only way to approach something like this. Sometimes you just need to start cutting. And that's when Sam shows up, literally saves these guys on the spot, right? And so what this guy, really what Muse realizes is this guy's the missing piece, right? Like the legal system's only one part of the equation, right? We have superheroes. So I need a vigilante, somebody that represents modern justice, right? And that's when he decides to go after Sam. Now for his part, as untrained as Sam is, and as in over his head as he is, he actually plays it pretty intelligently, right? Dodging, bobbing, and weaving, using his suit to make himself invisible, getting out of the way of Muse, hiding out, different things like that, right? Using the shadows to his advantage. The guy pulls it off incredibly well, because what he does is he literally leads Muse on a merry chase and then doubles back, goes back to the hostages and cuts them free. So it's like, this is really, really smart. I was impressed. I was like, dude, this guy, I love the way he's written here. Like, it's solid. And he even tells them, like, I'm going to get you guys out of here. The whole time, right? Like, Muse is just screaming at him, like, there's no way, Blind Spot, you're not going to allow it, right? You belong to me now, little man, and that sort of thing. And as they're making their way through the tunnels, because the judge and because, you know, the councilwoman never come down here, right? They're rarely even ever on the street level. And if they are, it's because they're traveling from one ivory palace to the next, right? So it's just things they observe but don't really see themselves as being a part of, they don't know how to get out of here. So fortunately for Blind Spot, he's able to kind of help them get out, because if he wasn't here and they were to somehow free themselves on their own, I mean, it'd be fish in a barrel. Right? I mean, there'd be no way they'd make it out of here in one piece. And so by getting them all, like pointing them to safety and telling them where to go, he doubles back again and then allows Muse to kind of follow him around in order to offer himself as a distraction while the others get away. The problem with this is that partway through, his battery dies. And so he comes to the realization that if he stays down here, he could just kind of move through the sewers and maybe he'll survive, maybe he won't. But Daredevil will never find him. So he crawls up one of the ladders, opens a manhole, calls Daredevil, and leaves his phone sitting there. So Daredevil at least knows he was down in the sewers when he was last seen. At that point, Matt Murdock is incensed. One part because this guy Muse, of course, in his mind is a criminal and needs to be dealt with, but two, he's made it personal by going after someone that Matt Murdock cares about. The other part of this is guilt, that Matt Murdock bringing Sam on told him not to necessarily get involved, but maybe there was something more he could have done, right? That kind of situation. And that's when we really get this kind of clear recognition of the weakness that Daredevil has when it comes to Muse. The fact that this guy sucks in all the sensory information around him makes it impossible for Daredevil to locate him. But that's when Daredevil switches it on his head, right? He's like, okay, if this guy is a black hole of information, then stop looking for information and look for where there's no information. Look for where I can't see, right? A blind spot, a hole out there in the city somewhere. When he does that, he tracks this guy down. Now, what you do is you switch back to Muse while he has blind spot. And this is where things get brutal because he drops him off. And I feel like we get just this perfect understanding of Muse, more so than we have before, right? He says, welcome to my Garrett blind spot. Every starving artist should have one. Now, technically, you shouldn't see any of this. It's a real look behind the curtain. There's this mystique about art, a shared fiction, if you will. An artist presents a piece to the world in its finished form and pretends that it simply appeared that way, effortlessly birthed from his genius. Both artist and audience prefer to believe that's the truth. It's nice to think that the really good creators have some direct connection to the divine, but it's a lie. It's a really, really cool point that he's making here because he's kind of drawing this comparison between like artistry and magic. And depending on who you're talking to, some will say that it's one and the same, right?
Spectre Mobile's new deal is so good it's a work of art.
Love the minimalism.
Yeah.
Right? You have an audience who's sitting there watching a person perform magic. They want to.
Now something I did want to talk about because it's going to come up in a minute. That character Blind Spot, which is like a sidekick to Daredevil. In the show, I don't think we're gonna see him in the show. I only say that because we could, but so far, Daredevil does not know anybody named Blind Spot. They haven't introduced him yet. You know. I mean, yeah, you can introduce him saying that, you know, they've been doing things together as of now, but I don't think he's going to be in the show. So then you won't, and I say that because Muse, you have Muse, you know, and what Muse does to him is crazy.
To be tricked. They want to believe that there's something greater going on here than a person hiding a card up their sleeve, that there's just something they don't know, some kind of supernatural element there. They know there's not, but they want to believe there is. And so he says, in reality, it's hours and hours of missteps, frustration, and bad ideas that get sliced away to reveal some kind of truth. It's never easy. In fact, it's agony. And removing this guy's blindfold inside this warehouse is just absolute madness. Human brains, body parts, the whole 9 yards. It's one of just the darkest things that I think I've ever seen. And he says, so what do you think? Of course, Sam responds, you don't have to do this. And this is where we get this awesome explanation, right? He says, wow, man, don't you think I told myself that? And he says, after that first one, it was a woman, just someone I picked up. I made her into something abstract, told myself I shouldn't, that it was wrong, but it didn't feel wrong. The truth is, kid, when I'm making, I'm strong. I am right, but people don't really understand what I do. They object to my preferred medium, if you get my meaning. I only have so much time to work before someone manages to stop me. I need to use every moment. So yes, Blind Spot, I have to do this. If I don't, who will? So it's almost kind of like this Joker type concept with his character, right? And he's like, what's caught your eye down there? Do you see something that you like? And he says, oh yeah, 10 Fingers. I liked him, thought he had potential, and he did, as you can see, right? So it's just kind of using people and not really even seeing them as people. He doesn't see anybody out here as people. He sees them as the eventuality of his art pieces and really nothing more. Because he literally says that, right? He became art just like the people who contributed their blood to my singularity piece. And so in the midst of this whole conversation, right, he tells Sam, like, the question to ask is, what am I going to make out of you? And that's when Daredevil pops up. And Daredevil is forced to watch as Muse says, okay, sure.
Oh, this is where things get crazy. Check out what happens to Blind Spot.
Sure, whatever. And then he says, you know, I think I just figured it out. Suddenly, I'm feeling inspired. And when he says that, he plunges his fingers into the eyes of Sam and blinds him, right? And Daredevil's just like, no, right? He's like forced to watch this. And the response of Muse, you see it, don't you? Blind Spot, right? It's beautiful, and throws him off a ledge, right? Throws Sam off a ledge. This guy's just the most callous, sadistic psychopath that I think has ever been introduced in a Daredevil comic. But it's written so well that it almost kind of makes you want to cheer for the bad guy, even though you know you're not supposed to. And so what Sam does is he tells Daredevil something that Muse said. He still has the people here, the ones he took for the blood mural. I think they're still alive. And he's like, don't let anyone else die. So Matt Murdock chases this guy down. And when he gets to him, what he realizes is that the mural that was painted in the beginning, yes, it was the blood of 113 people, but they're not all dead. They're being drained for their blood. They've just been snatched up by Muse at some point, just missing persons. And they're all just hanging upside down, dripping into a bucket. It is crazy, right? And so you have Muse, again, just very cavalier, very just devil may care. And he says, why do you care about these people? Don't you realize they're better off? Their lives mean something now. It doesn't matter if they die here, they're immortal. And then he's like, you know what? You just wouldn't understand. And then he just cuts the rope, right? And all these people are getting ready to plunge to their deaths. And so Matt Murdock is able to basically lock down this device and keep all these people from falling. But his concern is he's going to lose Muse in the process. The funny thing about this is once Muse gets to the rooftop, all these cops are waiting on him. And so Matt Murdock approaches him and Muse kind of beats him to the punch, right? He's like, yo, here, I think I can help. And he breaks his own fingers, right? He's like, this is what you were looking to do, right? Something like this, make it impossible for me to create art ever again. And he's like, don't worry, I'm happy to do it. It's better for the story, right? Because these art pieces that I've made, I can never duplicate. I can never do it again. Now they're one of a kind, right? My story is singular, self-contained, never to be duplicated in any way. And so Matt Murdock asks him, he says, what are you? And he pulls his mask off, only for us to end up seeing this extremely twisted and pretty disfigured face. And he's like, I'm just a man in a mask. Nothing more than that. And that's what's so cool, is because you almost kind of get this idea that like there's almost something supernatural about this guy, something beyond normally human. But the reality is we don't know his name, and there is nothing special about him. He's just a man in a mask. And that's basically it. So of course, Sam is effectively carted off and that sort of thing and taken to the hospital where he's left to recover. And of course, Daredevil tells him that he saved all the people who were basically injured, that kind of thing. And so the response to Sam is like, well, you know, it was worth it losing my eyesight. But the reality here is this guy is seemingly down for the count. But that's the story of Muse, guys. Let me know what you think about him down in the comments section. And
yeah, we have it. Alright guys, on that one, this was dope, this was awesome. This has been another episode of Villains Collectibles Story Time. I'm your boy, LC. Until next time guys,